Festidrag Développement, une entreprise 100% québécoise, contribue à développer des pilotes de course d'ici, partout en Amérique du Nord. Festidrag Développement tient à remercier ses précieux partenaires Silverwax, Rousseau Métal, Richard et compagnie, Volon Control, VP Racing Fuel et DL Performance, Globocam, Groupe Brière International, le Grand Prix de Trois-Rivières, Dumoulin Compétition, Permatex, Festidrag.tv, Hypertech, Choix Radio X et 91.9 Sport.
De retour à cette semaine aux courses, il revendique plus de 900 victoires en carrière au volant d'une voiture modifiée. Désormais semi-retraité de la course, mais maintenant promoteur du Orange County Fair Speedway à Middletown, New York. J'ai nommé Brett the Jet Hearn qui est avec nous ce soir. Brett, welcome on our show. What a privilege.
Well, this is pretty cool. I never done a podcast to a different country.
That's right.
That's new.
Yeah, it's new for you and it's new for us as well. We've been working on it for a couple of months now, but it's really looking good. So we've been able to have a couple of great speakers on our show, and you're next. And thank you very much for being with us. Lots of things to talk to you about your new endeavors as a racing promoter. You've been a race promoter for a single event each and every year in Malta, New York, but now it's a full-time job for you in Orange County Fair Speedway.
Well, it is, and again, I got really lucky that I timed my semi-retirement the way I did because, of course, last year would have been a tough year to make a living racing, and most of the guys that were trying to do that had to travel and chase races. They couldn't make a plan. Every week was different. Sometimes you could run, sometimes you couldn't, and you would chase it around all year. So it wasn't the kind of year that we wanted to start out with in Orange County. We had a lot of momentum going into March of 20, and everything just went bad. And now we're slowly recovering. It seems to me like down here it's a little bit more open than you guys are, and the COVID numbers are dropping dramatically now. So I expect by the time we get to summer to be at full force.
How lucky are you? How lucky are you? We're still under a curfew right now, so we can't meet each other. It's been such a tough year for drivers, for promoters, and you've been stuck between both of it last year as a race promoter and as a driver as well. So you're now openly talking about yourself as a semi-retirement driver. So it's going to be only on a part-time basis that we're going to see you behind the wheel.
Yeah, it's strictly a part-time basis. The problem that I have, just like I've always had, is that if I put my mind and wrap my mind too much around the racing and driving, it'll definitely deter me from doing a good job at the Speedway. So I have no other way of doing business than to go into it with 2 feet. So I have to do it on a very limited basis so that I don't fall into that trap.
Lots of things. I'm going to translate for our French listeners, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Brett, qui est dorénavant promoteur à temps plein de la piste d'Orange County Fair dans l'État de New York à Middletown. Une année très difficile au niveau de la COVID. Nous disait que de toute façon, ça aurait été très difficile pour lui d'être un pilote à temps plein, à courir d'un bord et de l'autre sur les quelques pistes qui étaient ouvertes ou les quelques événements payants qu'il y avait au cours de l'année. Ça aurait été une année très difficile, mais maintenant, très optimiste pour la suite. Déjà, des programmes de course ont été présentés à Middletown et à capacité réduite, mais comme les cas de COVID dans l'État de New York descendent dramatiquement, ben, s'attend à ce que quelque part cet été, ce soit à capacité complète pour les événements de course du côté de la piste. Il nous dit que maintenant, ben, ça aurait été difficile de penser à une carrière de coureur toujours très active à toutes les semaines, tout en se consacrant à un travail de promoteur. Brett, you're now a full-time promoter. Would you ever thought somewhere down the line during your racing career to eventually become a race promoter?
Well, I said many years ago that if the opportunity was ever correct for me, that I would be interested in that part of the business. I studied it for many years to understand not only the racing side of it, but also to understand the promoter side and the track preparation side. And I had by doing the big show for 12 years, I had an understanding of how what it took to do one big race a year, which believe me was a lot easier than doing a weekly track. But so I think I had the correct background, and I understand both sides of the business probably as good, if not better, than most promoters do, having raced for 45, 50 years. So, I think that I'm the right person, but we've got challenges. I mean, we've got big challenges, and obviously, Middletown's always been known for a fantastic car count. We've got a really racy track this year. We've got the dust under control. The track is smooth, it's fast, and now we have to convince people. And maybe it'll take time, but right now there's some apprehension as to whether or not it's safe to be in groups of people.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, we have a big drive-in section on the backstretch. We've got 6,000 plus grandstand. So even at 20, 30, 40, 50% capacity, we have a lot of room for people.
Brett qui nous parle de ses nouveaux projets comme promoteur, a toujours eu le sens de développer des événements de course. Depuis 12 ans, il était promoteur d'un événement sur la piste d'Albany-Saratoga à Malta, New York, un événement qui connaissait à chaque année beaucoup de succès. Et maintenant, du côté d'Orange County, ben là, le gros problème derrière tout ça, c'est lorsqu'on pourra ramener beaucoup de gens. Est-ce que les gens seront favorables à l'idée de s'entasser dans des gradins? Il dit que la grosseur du site nous aidera certainement à en entrer plusieurs et les gens seront en distanciation sociale amplement. On parle d'une capacité de plus de 6 000 spectateurs avec une section où, avec notre voiture, on peut aller se stationner, ce qu'on appelle un drive-in section. On est dans la voiture et on regarde les courses juste devant nous. You've been a promoter in Malta for 12 years, like you said, and I've been able to attend one of those events in Malta, and it was a great experience. But I think that a couple of your ideas, you took them from our events in Quebec. Am I right about that?
You're absolutely right, and I'll be the first to admit it, because you guys, both Granby and Drummondville, do a fantastic job, and it should be a big form of flattery for you guys to realize that of all the tracks that I go to in the course of the year, that I would draw some ideas from what you guys do, because you do a great job.
Brett qui nous mentionne que son Big Show à Malta, beaucoup d'idées viennent de ce qu'on fait au Québec. Adore l'expérience à chaque fois qu'il est venu chez nous parce qu'on fait un très, très bon travail au niveau du divertissement, d'en rajouter un petit peu plus pour le client, comme on le fait depuis déjà plusieurs années. You're opening the door, Brett, about your experience in Quebec, where you had a lot of success. I don't want to talk to you in the past, but because I expect to see you once again on our tracks eventually. But this is a place that you've had tremendous success throughout the years, a place where you made some great friends. What was the main recipe of success for Brett Hearn on our tracks?
I don't know if there was any one thing, but I started to go there in the early 80s, and I don't think I ever missed a year. When the Super Dirt Series began to go to Quebec for the 1, 2, or 3 races, I started to do that. It was always a trip that I looked forward to, and it was always a big deal for you guys, for us to be there, and it was a big deal for us to come there and be in front of the big crowds that you get there. So it was just a good formula, and my success was just. I can't really say it was any one thing. I mean, I went there every year not knowing what to expect, but I got some success early on, and I was able to carry that through decades.
Would you talk about those friends that you've made through the years? I know that Martin Roy Jr. have been with you for almost 30 years now. Mario Quirion has been with you for a while too. We're showing pictures right now about these friends that you've made through the years.
Right. So, we all met in different ways. Obviously, Martin was a driver. And one day I was asked if I would be interested to have Martin come to the United States and help me for a season. that he was ready to retire from driving and he wanted to come and learn English. What I didn't know was that he didn't know any English at all. When he came to my shop the first day, he almost spoke no English at all. So through the next 2 or 3 years, he helped me on my race car and we helped him learn English. And that was a big trade. Never thinking the day that I was asked if he would be interested, if I would be interested in having him come with me, that we would end up being lifelong friends. And we are to this day. And we really miss not being able to see you guys up there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they really miss not coming to the States. Hopefully that'll change really soon and we can get back together.
Yeah, we're crossing fingers. Lots of interesting things that you said. Je parle de sa relation avec le Québec, de ses résultats qui ont toujours été très intéressants sur nos circuits où il a toujours connu du succès. Il dit c'était tout simplement une bonne formule. On arrivait là-bas, on s'est fait des amis à travers le temps. C'est un endroit où je me suis toujours senti à ma place, à la maison, très confortable. Et pour peu importe la raison, je connaissais du succès sur le circuit. Je lui ai parlé de ses amis du Québec, en particulier Martin Roy Jr. et Mario Quirion, qui ont été à ses côtés depuis tellement longtemps. Et Brett nous rappelle comment ça avait commencé, cette relation-là avec Martin, qui avait ouvert la porte justement à aller travailler aux États-Unis à ses côtés. Mais ce que Brett ne savait pas, c'est que Martin ne parlait pas un mot d'anglais, mais finalement, jamais aurait-il pensé qu'ils deviendraient des amis pour la vie. Et encore aujourd'hui, souhaite les revoir le plus rapidement possible, que ce soit de notre côté ou de leur côté, évidemment. We're showing a picture where I'm with my dad in Charlotte with you a couple of years ago, where we broached the subject for a last run for you in Quebec. You remember it, right? When I talked to you about the fact that we would like to have you back just for one last stand in Granby, Drummondville, where you've had a lot of success throughout the years. I know there's a pandemic, but eventually the big blocks will come back in Quebec. And I personally want to see Brett Hearn once again on our tracks.
Well, that's true. We had a plan in place for 2020. The 2 races were on my schedule early on. And I have a car in the shop. I plan to do a couple more races this year, probably Super Dirt Week. And as long as I feel like I could be fairly competitive, maybe 2022.
Oh, so you're opening the door. So that's a good thing. It's a really, really good thing. Talking about big events, you're keeping your car ready to race. How was your experience in Bristol? I mean, this is a dream come true for every driver, especially on dirt, to have the chance to maybe tip your toe in Bristol on dirt. This is something that maybe you haven't even thought about doing it somewhere down the line, but you were able to. What was your experience about it?
Incredibly fast, incredibly humongous stadium with a racetrack in the center. Amazing, just an amazing place. And the sensation of speed there was probably surpassed any speed that you'll ever feel, even at Syracuse. We literally were running around there without lifting the throttle on a big block, and that's pretty incredible.
It was so damn fast. Good show for everybody watching. There was some fans in the stands, but most of us were watching on the internet. So, and I think that you guys are going back there next year. So maybe the show will be even better next time.
Maybe. It's an incredibly fast place, and even when it slicks off, it's very hard to get a run on guys. So time trials are very, very important. But I thought it went really well, and it was, and everyone ran, well and safe, and no one got their stuff tore up. So, it was pretty interesting.
Je parlais de Brett et de son expérience à Bristol sur la terre battue pour la première fois. Les modifiés se sont rendus du côté de Bristol pour rouler sur la terre, à apprécier l'expérience et souhaite y retourner la saison prochaine. We're showing a picture, Brett, about your 900 career wins. I think the number is now 917 or so, around 915, 917. There was some thought about maybe trying to go to 1,000. Is it still something behind your mind? Or I mean, it's always tough to win on a regular basis, so it would take you a couple of more years.
Well, I mean, unless I was winning 20 races a year, it would probably take me till I was 100. So, yeah, so it's not really too at this point, really not really too realistic. But I would like to. I'm a 9. Actually, I'm 919 right now. I would like.
Okay.
It would be pretty cool to get to 920. So we'll see.
We'll see. 900 victoires et plus. Pour Brett Ernst, je lui demandais à quel point le chiffre 1000 lui traverse l'esprit. Il dit, si je ne gagne pas au moins 20 victoires par année, j'en ai jusqu'à 100 ans avant de me rendre jusqu'à 1000. Donc, c'est un chiffre qu'on met certainement de côté pour l'instant. So you're approaching retirement now. You're not the only one. And I think right now in 2021, we're looking at maybe the passing of the torch right now for a couple of older drivers who are now approaching retirement. This is the case for you, for Danny Johnson, for Alan Johnson as well, Jimmy Horton, who they all have been great rivals for you on the track throughout the years. But do you think the future of the sport is in great hands with the young drivers that are coming through?
Well, it's very interesting that you say that because we just had over the weekend at Orange County, we just had 2 14-year-old drivers win.
Wow.
And we had a 12-year-old driver won Eastern State Sportsman race last year. So it depends. If these obviously are very talented drivers, if they have the wits about them and they can find the means to continue with their careers, I'm sure they'll be very, very successful. So just when you think there's no young drivers coming up, all of a sudden these start to pop up, and who knows where it will go. I mean, it's definitely something that racing is definitely something that at that age you either decide that you are going to go after it 100%, or if you're not willing to make that commitment, you do something else. But that remains to be seen, because there's definitely some very young, talented drivers out there, and I think there's right now a lot of owners as well that are looking for drivers and don't feel that anyone is good enough to drive their cars. So those guys are sitting on the sideline waiting and looking for drivers. In the meantime, you have that group that you just mentioned. All of us have raced our entire lives. We're all headed into our 60s now, and how much is really left? At some point, we will all have to go to the sidelines. And so the other doors will open for these drivers.
Was it tough the last couple of years for you, Brett, who you've always been used to win on a regular basis? Almost each and every weekend, you were able to add at least one win to your record book. But the last couple of years, it's been a struggle winning on a regular basis. But it's only normal. I mean, we weren't getting any younger. We're getting up in age each and every year, so it's pretty normal. Like in every sport, you don't get the results that we want. But for you, how did you handle all of this?
Well, I mean, there was a time when we were winning 40% of our races, 40% of the overall races. But a bad night for us would be a 5th or a 6th, not a 12th or a 15th. And the consistency began to go away a little bit, where we still had we had 10 or 12 wins a year, but we didn't have that consistency, And when the revolution to the coil spring car began in 2018, we didn't adapt to that as quickly as we needed to, and so that set us back a little bit. But that's life. That's the way things happen. I don't like to. At least while I was doing it full time, I didn't want to be in the game to participate. I wanted to be in the game to win.
Yeah.
And now it's a little different. I understand that not being into this with 2 legs in, it's going to be difficult. Not being in the car on a weekly basis, it's going to be much more difficult. So my expectations have backed up a little bit from where I was. And that's just a natural progression.
Beaucoup de choses intéressantes dans le propos de Brett lorsque je lui demande s'il a trouvé difficile au cours des dernières années d'avoir moins de résultats. Lorsqu'on est habitué de gagner 40% de nos courses, ou à peu près, comme il nous l'a dit, de se retrouver à avoir moins de résultats qu'une mauvaise soirée à une certaine époque, c'est une 5e ou une 6e, mais dorénavant, c'était des 15e à 20e positions. Ça, c'était plus difficile à accepter. Et le plus dur pour lui actuellement, c'est de se dire, ben là, je fais moins de courses, d'aller moins derrière le volant, mais que ça fait partie de la vie. Et là, ben, la vie progresse d'une autre manière pour lui à titre de promoteur. Do you see yourself, Brett, still involved in racing for many years, or you're just going to step away sometimes down the road and just watch racing from the stands, maybe?
I don't know. I don't know if I don't really know if I would be a great spectator at the events. I've watched, obviously, I watched a lot of video. I'm interested in seeing, how successful each track is, gauging different things in the business. I don't really know. I don't really have a vision for where I would be, say, 8 years from now, at all. I really don't. But in the meantime, I still want to drive fairly successfully, and I want to run the track fairly successfully, and enjoy this opportunity and this challenge.
Just to end the interview, Brett, I want to talk to you about your greatest rivalries in your career. There's been a lot of rivalries through these 40 years behind the wheel. Who would be the greatest rival that you've had? We talked about Danny Johnson. We talked about Jimmy Horton. There's many of them throughout the years, but which one of them would be the toughest guy to beat on the track?
Well, one thing that Martin Roy always said to me, he said, every year there's someone else that steps up as your rival, or maybe for two years or 3 years in a row. He said, but it's always you and someone else. And that someone else is always changing. So when, in the 80s, I had a big rivalry with Carl Collis. And then, right around the late 80s, it was Bob McCready. Then it was Doug Hoffman. Then it was and then it was Danny Johnson. And then, at one time Horton and I went after each other in the mid 80s. There was always another guy and myself. It seemed like that's the way that it always went. And, probably the most famous people talk about it, 25 years later are the battles that Danny and I had after he took over my ride at Middletown. I built my own team back up. Well, we went at each other, in both a small block feature and a big block feature on a weekly basis. And it was winner take all, no holds barred. I mean, we just went at each other hard, and it was real. It was very real.
And what would be the relationship that you are having now with these drivers who've been rivals? But I mean, you've all drivers, so I must assume that there's respect behind all of this.
Well, I mean, I think, there's respect. There's definitely respect, and I don't have my game face on like I used to every day, so it's different. I'm in a different position now. I don't necessarily I don't view anybody as my rival. I'm just I treat it a little bit different. I approach it differently, and those were pretty intense times. They were good times, and they were very motivational. But no regrets.
One of our listeners, Daniel Robitaille, I think is the greatest Brett Hearn fan in Quebec right now, just told us that you've won races for 20 different owners during your career. This is quite an accomplishment. I mean, making people, at least 20 people happy during a career, this is something.
Well, I that's a pretty good number considering that I haven't really driven for a lot of different owners at all. I mean, probably in the last 25 years, I've only driven for maybe 4, 5, 6 different owners. So that's a good stat. Daniel, thank you very much. And he is my number one fan of Quebec. Always has been.
And there's been really nice cars throughout the years. We're showing a lot of them during the interview. The 6 car, I remember the Auto Palace number 72, the Budweiser number 3. I like your 20 for sure. The recent 20, Matson overhead doors. But can you pick a favorite maybe?
So, there's some iconic periods of time. So we had the Pepsi car that we won Syracuse with in '85, and then Then the Freightliner cars were pretty iconic, and then the Auto Palace cars were iconic, and then of course, a lot of people's favorite are the Budweiser cars. Those are the cars that a lot of people remember. And then we sort of finished up with this black and yellow brand that we've had since 2010. And so now everyone remembers me as the black and yellow number 20 in the Madsen overhead doors. And even though I've been with Madsen for pretty much for 25 years, they've been with me on some level. We had the Briosky small blocks for a while, and so there's been a lot of great cars. So I think probably people currently, if people talk about their favorite car, it's usually the Budweiser.
Yeah, and I think I would choose the Auto Palace, the 72. I think it's the first car that I can remember. I'm 30 years old now, and I think it's the first car, the 72.
Right. Yep.
Pretty much it. Brett, thank you very much for your time. It's been such a pleasure. And hopefully we'll get to meet you face-to-face next time for another interview for our show. What a privilege, really. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and see you later.
Anytime. I want to thank all the people in Quebec for all their support over the years, and maybe I'll see you one more time. And all my friends, Mario, Martin, Diane, everyone. See you guys soon.
All right. Thank you very much. And I can tell you something. Brace yourself, because the next time we see you with your car in Quebec, it's going to be a memorable night.
Okay.
See you, Brett. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Brett Hearn. Quel moment quand même. Personnellement, de recevoir Brett sur le show des gars de course, c'est quelque chose. Quelle légende, vraiment. Il y en aura d'autres, ça c'est sûr et certain. Parlant de légende, ben lui, il est en train de créer sa propre légende. Dans la famille Salva, c'est la direction de course qui occupe toute la place. De Gaston à Steve, on reçoit le fils aujourd'hui. Steve Salva, en retour avec nous. À tout de suite.